folks, and welcome to their Sunday morning Samoflange. I'm Matt, and I want to talk about prequels. I was going to do something like the worst and the best prequels, and when I started thinking and writing down my favorite prequels, I only got to 3. And then I looked online to say, okay, what am I missing then? And not much. Some of these, like, I agree they're good movies, but do they qualify for a prequel? Like, King Kong's been around for a while, but Kong Skull Island was a reboot of the story. Sure, it's the first time we met Kong. Godzilla -1, which I guess, now that I'm thinking about, could be a prequel. It's almost like it's separate, because it doesn't fit within a legacy of movies. I don't know, but when I think about that, one of these picks I have does not fit within a legacy of movies either. Technically, it's a movie standing on its own that takes place in a younger year of the hero, the legend, the lore. And it doesn't connect to any other movies. I feel like the prequel must connect to the movies. And in a way, I mean, I saw this, it is true. Temple of Doom is a prequel to Raiders of the Lost Ark. So technically, it fits into that. And yes, it would be the best prequel. It would be the best prequel. I'm looking over mine. It would be the best prequel. And I didn't consider that a prequel, even though it's quite clearly stated this happens before Raiders of the Lost Ark. So that was one I missed. The one I had to, give up on, I'm talking about the good ones first because I don't really have any order for these, was Young Sherlock Holmes. I really love that. It doesn't really tie into another Sherlock Holmes story. It was just something that was in the, I think it was like in the mid-'80s. I remember getting this at the library and loving it, especially at the end when you find out, and I'm just going to spoil it all, you find out the person he's fighting and he thinks he destroys, comes back and changes his name to Moriarty. And, it's great because that's going to be, I'm a huge Sherlock Holmes fan. So I thought that prequel as a kid, I'd already read the books at that point. I was thinking, yeah, that is so cool. And in my mind, it was the official, canonical, prequel to the books. No, not really. Not really, it wasn't. And I was thinking about that because I wrote that one down and then scratched it out when I realized I want prequels that tie into other movies. So Temple of Doom would have to be number 1. Number 2 would really seriously have to be Prey. I love that idea. Predator should never do any more sequels. It should just be going back in time. And I've said this several times before, the hero fighting a predator during the American Revolution or, during the Viking days, Vikings fighting predators. It should be prequels all the way through. Predators through time. We know they've been hunting on our ground for years. I think that's a cool idea. At least do it maybe 1 or 2 more times, and then we're probably good. You could probably have to stop there. But the sequel, The Predator, terrible, terrible. Worst one in the series there. And so I like the prequel. And I thought Prey was an excellent idea for a movie, and I hope they do more like that, at least one more like that, just to see how it goes. If it gets repetitive or gets old, then they can stop. But I really hope they go in that direction. That's the direction to go with the series, in my opinion. And that is, of course, connected. It's very, very connected to Predator 2, which was great. But also, I hope if they ever do another prequel Predator movie, I hope the Predator wins. The Predator can win in the past, I believe. The humans don't always have to win. I feel like a human winning cheapens Arnold's victory and Danny Glover's victory. I like to think that Arnold was the first human to beat the aliens. Of course, he wasn't. And of course, that's not to say a human could come up ahead, but predators really need to be the winners. If predators are just going to that planet to die, I mean, obviously humans should be a tough, cookie to fight. That's why they keep going there, because they're good prey. But let the Wookiee win, right? Let the predator win every once in a while. I think that's what they should do if they did a prequel sequel, if that makes any sense. There are no good prequels. In fact, there are awful prequels. I'm thinking about another one right now. Right now, I am thinking about another one for awful prequels. I have so many awful prequels here. The next one that I thought was good, the only other one I thought was good was Saw 10. It's a story of John from the first movie, and he's dying of cancer, like we all know, but it was one last adventure he had because he got hoodwinked into thinking there was a miracle cure for his cancer, and so he got back at the doctors who killed him. And it takes place right in between the last, I think, what was it, the third movie was his ending, John's ending or whatnot, or the second movie. It takes place right before he dies. He has a mini adventure in between the two movies where he thinks he can cure his cancer, but he doesn't. And he's just going to get worse from there on out. So I don't mind that. I'm glad they brought the original back. They did some inventive things, I thought. The Saw series, I probably am one and done in all of those. Like they're just a little too gruesome to watch all the time. And I probably wouldn't rewatch them again, but just as a one and done, I've enjoyed it. And I've enjoyed that as a prequel. Now, for good prequels, that's it. That's all. That's it. That's no more. No more. Gonna go to bad prequels, and there are several. There are several here that I want to talk about. I don't know which one is more egregious, because they're all just awful, awful, awful. I'll start with the one, I guess, that least bothers me in a way. Dumb and Dumberer. This is when you thought Jim Carrey was basically done with these characters. I wish he was, because Dumb and Dumber 2 was awful. But Dumb and Dumberer, was the prequel one. I knew it was going to be bad when I heard about it. However, the only saving grace for this, and the only reason it's number 5, is because the guy that played young Jim Carrey, was a good young Jim Carrey. He was a good young, and I remember thinking that, I was like, wow, that kid has a future. And of course, he went nowhere. At least I don't think he went anywhere after that movie. So, but he did a pretty spot on good Jim Carrey, young Jim Carrey, Lloyd Christmas or whatever. And it was believable, at least for me. So, Dumb and Dumber, you get number 5 only because one of your actors looked like a young Jim Carrey. The other ones, I just don't know how to rank these from worst. I'll go with this one. This is probably the most controversial one. It's X-Men First Class. I absolutely hate that movie. A lot of people love that movie. My wife absolutely loves the movie. They grew on me as the characters moved on to one or two other movies I think they did. And they grew on me and they're all right. But that first movie I just felt, I don't want to see young versions of the classic characters from Bryan Singer's X-Men. I just didn't want to see that. Will I ever rewatch this movie again? Maybe not. Maybe not. But I will admit, as their movies went on, even though Armageddon gets panned a lot, it did have some good scenes in it. There's a Dark Phoenix one with Armageddon in it. Either way, I don't know what they were called, but they were all right. The sequels were all right. Days of Future Past was actually pretty solid too, with them where they shared the screen with the originals. But First Class did not enjoy. Oh, really getting tough here. So the least slap in the face, I guess. Cube Zero. Cube, if you've never seen the science fiction movie Cube, watch it. Brilliant. Brilliant. Actually, it takes place on one set, but you don't know that. They film it to where they just change. All they did was change the lighting, and it feels like they have, at least a couple of rooms they're filming in, but they only filmed it in one room, I think. And it's so brilliant how they did, and they kept it interesting. The story is I just recently watched this like a year or so ago. I rewatched it. Still good. Still a solid film. Here's what you don't want. After that, you're like hyped up, like, heck yeah, man. Do they have any other Cube? Yeah, they gave him some money since the movie probably made money on rentals or whatnot. So they gave him some money, and he wasted it on a terrible movie called Cube 2 Hypercube, which is awful, beyond awful. It's so bad. I was so hyped when it came out, and I thought it was absolute garbage. Well, then he lost all his money, so he made another one on the cheap. And this one was called Cube Zero. Oh, maybe the origins of how the cube came to be. No. It's two guys talking in a flimsy set. I mean, made off a shoestring community college budget. And it is so terrible. So terrible. He has I don't know if it was written by the same people or someone bought the IP and made a crappy prequel to this. But it's such an embarrassment. But I was kind of excited to see that one too. I was like, okay, great. Go back to simpler times, just using what you got, like the first movie did, except give us a reason for the cube or whatnot. And they had no reason, and it was an utter and complete waste of time. This is hard. But I'm going to go with the Aliens movies, Prometheus, Romulus. I have not seen the other one. Everyone says it's so good. I'll watch it when it comes out streaming, but they're not going to get my money anymore. They got my money on the first two, and I'm ashamed. So even though the third one's good, too bad. So sad. You had my money for the first two. You're not going to get my money for the third one. I remember walking out of Prometheus and being completely tricked. Me and my brother both went out thinking, that was pretty good. And then the next day we started thinking about it, and we talked about how terrible it really was, like how nothing made sense in that movie. And then I was ashamed of myself because, yes, I'd been duped by a movie. And then I saw Romulus. It looked really cool. It was even worse, I think. Like all the quote unquote surprises were not surprises. And I figured it was just like, it was so terrible. Like every quote unquote surprise was, you knew it from a mile away. You guessed the plot. Like it was the simplest thing. It was like the butler had the smoking gun and he hit it right before everyone came in and said, "Hey, who shot the dead body?" I mean, it was so obvious. I was like, "Real?" I said, I thought there was a twist to think, well, maybe it's so obvious because it's a twist. And when their quote unquote twist came, and it was exactly what you thought at the beginning of the movie, you're like, "Oh, this is terrible." I even told my wife afterwards, I said, "This is horrible. They should stop making aliens movies." And I don't care. Everyone tells me the new one's good, but no thank you, no thank you, no interest, not going to watch it. The number one worst prequel, in my opinion, is Tremors 4. I love the Tremors series. I adore the Tremors series. Everyone's seen Tremors. If you haven't, it's a good movie. Kevin Bacon, Fred Ward, excellent. In my opinion, in a few people's opinion, actually a lot of fans' opinion, Tremors 2 is the best movie of the series. Now, it's funny because Michael Gross downplays Tremors 2. I don't know why. I don't know why he's sour on that. I feel like he's sour on the fans for loving Tremors 2 so much because he continually says that's his least favorite, even though fans overwhelmingly adore Tremors 2. Tremors 2 was made off of a lower budget. It brought back Fred Ward. It could have. They were thinking. I think Kevin Bacon dropped out, but then they realized we don't need Kevin Bacon. His story was wrapped up. There's nothing more for him to do. Let's give Fred Ward a happy ending, and it was great. I mean, honestly, when I rewatched them last time, and I will be rewatching them again soon, it's my favorite one. I get so excited watching Tremors 2. Tremors 3. They could have brought. I read a book about this. They could have brought Fred Ward back, but because they had the money and the budget. But they said, you know what? We've given him a happy ending. Let's move on. Now, this whole time, supposedly, they were trying to get Reba McEntire back in, but according to the book, both times during the filming of 2 and 3, she was on tour. Like she was on board to do 2, but dropped out during a tour. And then during 3, I think she was doing her sitcom, Reba. And between that and her schedule, she did not have time to film 3. She said she wanted to, according to her, she wanted to, but the time schedule wouldn't allow. And so they kept the storyline that Bert had gotten divorced in the second one. And it would have been perfect if they would have brought Reba McEntire back for the third one and, kind of gave Michael Gross's character a send-off. Now, this kind of completed your trilogy. What I did not know is the trilogy, the third one, made money. The most in DVD sales. This is what they said, the highest DVD sales at the time for a Universal picture. Universal, gave them some money because 2 sold really well, but they had no idea it was going to make money. So this greenlit a TV show and the promise of another movie. Like they were so excited about the sales coming in from the DVD that they made their money back. So the TV show, if you don't know, is excellent. You can get it all on DVD, and it's like 13 episodes. And it's like you watch Firefly and you think, wow, this is a great show. Why'd they cancel it? If you like Tremors, you love that show. The show had a Monster of the Week theme, so it wasn't always revolving around Tremors, even though it did. It brought in all the characters from the ass blasters from the third one, the shriekers from the second one, which are very rare in future movies. I guess the shriekers were too expensive to put together. But the third one kind of ties everything together and has some fun scenes. But the TV show is brilliant. It made me laugh. It was great. Sci-Fi Channel buried it. They didn't know how to promote it, and they buried it in their lineup and switched it up all the time. This is back before DVRs and stuff, so people couldn't find it. The times were a bit messed up. They showed them out of order, which confused people. I mean, it was just a big cluster. And then when the show got canceled in its first season, that's when Universal kind of reneged. They made their promise. They greenlit the movie, but then they slashed the budget. I mean, the lowest ever, and you can tell. Tremors 4 is a prequel, taken in the wild, wild west of where the worms first got discovered in the town of Perfection. I guess and just lay dormant for another 100 years or so. after that. I don't really understand the explanation of why they suddenly appear 100 years later. But it gives us another mutation of the worm, the grub. And the grub is a very cheap movie prop because they didn't have any money. This, and even if they don't have money, you just film out in the desert, right? It's like a Western. I get it. But everything, it was devoid of laughs. The first 3 movies had humor, laugh out loud moments. I watched Tremors 4 and I was shocked at how bad it was. I was happy. I saw it was a prequel. Prequels were the thing because the Star Wars prequels were coming out at the time. So you make a prequel. I was like, yes, Wild Wild West, Tremors, sign me up. And boy, does that movie blow. And every time I do a Tremors movie marathon, I want to skip 4, but I put it in hoping there's something in there I can appreciate. Burt Gummer's ancestor's back. He's playing a different character. And Michael Gross, he knows this is the most hated movie by fans. He said it's his favorite movie. I think he's just trolling. But he said it's one of his favorite movies because he got to play a different type of Gummer, and he liked that. He said the script appealed to him because it was a different type of character this time. And the thing is, I think he's just trying to give the least loved film some love and the most loved film some shade. I get that. I can kind of respect that in a way. He's trying to balance out the scales a little bit, but no one's buying it. Everyone knows Tremors 4 is the worst. Of course, they ride the ship, in my opinion, with Tremors 5. Tremors 6 was a little bit of a slow stinker, but they finished solid with Tremors 7, and I'm happy. They'll never make any more, and that's at this point, it's done. It's done. The Tremors series is over. I've made peace with it. But Tremors 4, so atrocious. So atrocious. So now I want to talk about, we're still talking about prequels here. What prequels do I think they should make? What about other prequels here? I guess honorable dismentions. Of course, everyone wants me to talk about Star Wars. I don't hate the movies, but I don't love them. I'm okay on them. They're fine, but I'll never defend them. But if someone loves them, I won't say they're terrible either. I think they're inferior to the original trilogy. But, again, that's neither here nor there. Other prequels, Fantastic Beasts, the entire prequel trilogy is just a bore. It's so boring. It's one of 2 movies I've ever fallen asleep watching. The movie was so boring that I actually fell asleep. It could not keep my interest. But it did the exact opposite. I fell asleep. Only happened 2 times. I cannot remember. Oh no! And the other time it happened, I was up super late. We were watching it super late. We had started a series of movies, and by the time we got to the end, it was already 2 a.m. or something. And I was just beat. But this time it was like 8. It was early, and I fell asleep. I think it was the second movie. I think it was the second one. I can't remember. So boring. All of those are just so boring. They have no imagination. The Harry Potter movies had some type of magic to them. I don't know if I'll ever watch the Harry Potter movies again, to be honest with you. I am excited about the TV show because maybe it'll incorporate more of the book storyline in there. But I thought that was terrible too. I don't have another prequel here. I thought I did. Thought I had one more. I don't check in my notes here, but I don't think I did. Anyway, prequels in general. Should you make them? That's the thing. Unless they. I know what it was. I just saw this year Fury Road, Mad Max Furioso. What? Chris, one of the Chris's, what's his name? I can't remember. Thor. He's great. He's great. Whenever they put him in it, he's great. And in fact, they knew this movie sucks. Let's put another scene of him in there. He was excellent in it. He was fun. There was some fun action. What do you do when you make a perfect movie like Fury Road? But Furiosa added 0. Absolutely nothing to the storyline. I felt that I did not get any new knowledge or didn't aha moments or anything like that. I felt it was a complete waste of time for that. But like I said, good acting by the Thor Chris. I can't still think Hemsworth. There it is. Chris Hemsworth, excellent. His scene's great. Like about, 50% of the movie I liked. And the other 50 I thought absolutely was terrible. So it's a love-hate relationship. And I wanted to love it because I think Fury Road is brilliant. And the thing is, I feel bad because what's the director supposed to do? Make another Fury Road? Yeah, kind of. I want to see that again. But he can't. He has to do something different. So I understand why. Well, no, I still don't, because the prequel made no sense about a character I really don't care about, who really doesn't talk much. So and Mad Max doesn't talk either, but you can still make it interesting. So for me, I don't know. That I'm so. Do we need prequels though? Do we need prequels? I recently on Prince of the Universe talked to Wes about an idea I had for a sequel prequel to Die Hard. You know, like Godfather 2. That was another thing I saw online. Godfather 2 is a prequel. It's a prequel sequel. Prequel sequels I don't mind. You know, you can do that pretty good. But a standalone prequel, that's hard to do, because obviously you're getting a younger actor to play the version of this other character. And I don't think that would work. Like, I kept thinking of what would I want to see for my favorite shows. I want to see the world again. They're doing another Spartacus. They're doing a What If Spartacus spinoff. A What If. I don't like that. I don't want that. But the thing is, though, do I want young House of Batiatus, a prequel like the season, 1.5 was? I thought season 1.5 was brilliant. But do I need something even younger than that? No. I'm thinking back to movies that I love. Do they need prequels? I don't think so, unless you have a really good idea. But what could the prequel explain that you did not already know? Now, books that do prequel sequels, like the Silo series, the second book was mainly a prequel that pushed the story along a little bit, sequel along, but it mainly kind of give you a catalog. That's nice, but that's not a movie. If they put that in a movie, it'd be a prequel sequel, which I think is different. So I just don't understand. And I like how one of the searches I came up with said Wonder Woman 1984 is a good prequel. Prequel to Justice League? That's terrible. 1984 was terrible. So I think that just shows that I don't know if you can do a good prequel. You have to have a really engaging story. Besides the three I like Prey, great idea. You went elsewhere. You just went back in time. Saw 10, you had a nice little storyline. You wrapped it up in between. I like that. But what else is there? What else type of prequel could you do that would be interesting? Like I said, I went through all of my favorite. Would I want a Star Wars prequel about another era? I mean, yeah, but of course Lucasfilm's not going to do it. And if they did, I wouldn't want them to do it. Even if it was related to the old canon. So I can't really say what more do I want. They've done, and I've never seen Strange New Worlds for Star Trek, and I always wanted I think it's Captain Pike series. I always thought that was a good idea to do, but nowadays I do not trust Paramount with Star Trek at all. I do not trust them at all. I don't think anyone can handle those IPs gloriously. I also saw The Hobbit was on here for worst prequels, and here's the thing. I never liked The Lord of the Rings. Yes, I agree The Hobbit was horrendous, but I also don't like Lord of the Rings. And I thought about it the other day. I said, would I ever watch Lord of the Rings again? And the answer is no. I've seen those movies once in theaters. I've never seen them since. I will never watch them again. Will I read the book? Yes, several more times. Lord willing, in my lifetime, I will. But I will never watch those movies again. So why would I care about prequels? And there just doesn't seem, and I know they're doing a Gollum prequel. No, I'm done. I'm done with just anything that they bring out with Lord of the Rings. I'm just done now. But I don't know. TV shows that are sequels, I don't know. Better Call Saul was good, but it also, it was a prequel series in a way. It turned into a sequel here and there, but at the same time, I don't know. Unless there's a really, really solid story. I just don't say, like Harry Potter, I would like to see the Harry Potter class of, the parents of the kids. That would be fun. James Potter and young Severus. And still old Dumbledore. I don't know. I think that'd be interesting. That would be interesting to do. So there's ways you could do prequels that would be interesting. So there's one I thought about there. Of course, I do love the Dune prequels, but there's no way on God's green earth they'll ever make those into movies. Dune would have to go bonkers at the box office, because they're going to do all of Frank Herbert's movies first before they even think about touching the prequels. A lot of fans enjoy the prequels too. There are some Frank Herbert, purists, like there always going to be, but a lot of fans. They would not keep making, Kevin Janderson, Brian Herbert would not keep making these Dune books if they weren't making bank, and they are making bank. So that's why they keep making them. And in my opinion, all but one of them were really good, and a lot of them are prequels. And I'll be honest, I I think though, of course, I'm biased. I love Kevin G. Anderson, but I think those books are way better than anything Frank Herbert wrote. Whoa! I know. The legendary Frank Herbert. I think his son and Kevin J. Anderson have outdone the father. Their stories are just way more engaging. I do like Frank Herbert's Dune and some of the sequels up until God Emperor of Dune. I thought they were good, but I'm blown away by some of the prequel stories that they still come out with. Like every time they come up with a new one, I'm like, do I really need more in this universe? I always question that every time they bring out another series. Like the latest Caladan trilogy, I was like, oh, do we really need to explain more in the timeline? And by the first couple of chapters, I'm hooked. I am so hooked on this story. I'm like, yes, we always need more Dune. So I think those are prequel books, though. Those are prequel books. Prequel books are easier. But turning that to a movie, getting younger characters of these established actors, that's where it's hard. There's a big disconnect. We don't see our star who carried the franchise, which does make a difference. It does make a difference. And when you try to recast them with a younger version, it's really hard to do. It's really hard to pull off. You're going to have to, like Saul did, bring back the original and set the time, just rotate the time back, or make it happen in that time, in our time, just put it in the past, like where none of the characters, younger versions of the characters are. That's the only way to do a prequel. Now, thankfully, the prequel craze came and went with the Star Wars prequels. Sure, they still make prequels today, but they're not as prevalent as they were back then, in my opinion. But again, I don't know if there's another prequel that I have to see. I have to see the origin, except for the Harry Potter one I did. That would actually be cool. But I'd rather have that in book form, to be honest. So I don't know. So you'll have to let me know in the comments if there are prequels you think should be made. And then how would they handle that prequel? How would they handle that prequel? That's an even harder question. And prequel sequels, yeah, because you have the original in it and they share the time. But I just don't see, and I mean, it's too expensive to CGI an old actor's face, the entire movie. And, they do that for certain scenes and stuff, de-age them. A lot of times it does look a little weird. Sometimes it looks pretty good. And I think that'd be hard to de-age someone for the entire movie. But in all honesty, maybe that's the only way they could get away with it. If they just de-age the character. And through that, it was super expensive and not worth it. No one's going to spend that. No company will spend that amount of money. But you also need a relative story. Like, what does this reveal about the character? What does this tell us? What does it explain? What is the worth of seeing a prequel when we already know their future, that character's future? That's the big question. Now, I'm not saying it can't be done or it shouldn't be done. It's just that's a hard nut to crack, man. That's hard. And so when I was thinking about good prequels, I was really stretching. And when I saw Indiana Jones, Temple of Doom, I passed it up because I thought, no, that's not really a prequel. But you know what? I changed my mind when I started the podcast. I was like, well, it kind of has to be because there's hardly any other good prequels out there that don't. I mean, a lot of people have tried. Probably people with good intentions, not just trying to make a quick buck. I feel a few of these were just trying to make a quick buck on you because you remember the IP, but those contracts got too big or the actors got too old, so we're trying to recast the same amount of characters and try to recapture that magic. That only happens once. And Hollywood continues to do this, which tells me they never learn. So, for that reason alone, maybe there shouldn't be any more prequels. Unless they have a really good idea. But racking my brain through movies, like even superhero movies, do we need? I like Batman Begins. I know I saw that one on there. That's technically a reboot. It's a reboot. It's not a continuation of Joel Schumacher's one. Could they have done one back in the day? Maybe like back during Michael Keaton, George Clooney, go back in time to first Batman. I don't think so. I think that would have ruined it unless Michael Keaton would have come back. And at that point, I think it was just long gone conclusion. So I just don't know what you do. I don't know what to do. And I don't know any other prequels to talk about. And now when I'm talking about prequel books here, it's just so hard to do unless you stay away from the original actors, their timeline. Don't do younger versions of their characters. Just set the timeline story back. I think, or just de-age them all digitally. That's the only options I can see. But let me know in the comments below what you think about prequels, what your favorite ones are, what your worst ones are. You agree or disagree. And I will see you next time on Saturday Morning Samoflange.